Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election. And it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there? Hello everyone, I'm Papa Bear. Today is Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, and this is What's Out There. A lot of stuff going on here in the past few days. Facebook, I don't know if you heard about the rumor or not, but Facebook has a class action suit going on. And if you want to get in on that class action, it's you can contact a law firm by the name of Blood, Hurst and O'Riordan. They've already filed a class action against Facebook. You don't need to do anything more than get out your pens and write this down. 619-338-1100. That's 619-338-1100. Talk to them and join at this time. According to this post here, they called a receptionist. The receptionist took the information and had them leave one of their lawyers a message. That's an easy job. It should be easy enough. And that's just a Facebook class action suit. Now, Google has a whole lot more on it than Facebook does. They're collecting all kinds of stuff. If you're using Chrome, that's probably where they're getting it from. But it's more than just that. It goes way back. Okay. So there's a few things here I touched on. I want to kind of grab here in the first half hour here. Washington, D.C. West Virginia Congressman Alex Mooney recently proposed legislation to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. Mooney harshly criticized U.S. monetary policy, citing the 96% loss since the end of the gold standard in 1913, which in real-life terms means that a dollar in 1913 would now only be worth 4 cents. Okay? The United States dollar has lost 30% of its purchasing power since 2000 and 96% of its purchasing power since the end of the gold standard in 1913. Under the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation objective, the dollar loses half of its purchasing power every generation, or 35 years, the bill stated. The legislation notes that the International Gold Exchange Standard from 1914 to 1971 did not provide for a United States dollar convertible into gold, and therefore helped cause the Great Depression and stagflation. H.R. 5404 goes on to explain the purported evidence of having a gold-backed dollar that is actually convertible to gold. The gold standard puts control of the money supply with the market instead of the Federal Reserve. The gold standard means legal tender defined by and convertible into a certain quantity of gold. Under the gold standard through 1913, the United States economy grew at an annual average of 4%, one-third larger than the growth rate since then, and twice the level since 2000, Mooney said. Some experts, however, have questioned whether the U.S. actually has enough physical gold to back the U.S. dollar, and the country is notoriously secretive about physical gold reserves, and there's never been a full independent audit of its gold. America is believed to possess roughly 8,133.5 tons of physical gold in its official reserves, with 58% reportedly in Fort Knox, 20% at West Point in New York, 16% at the U.S. Mint in Denver, Colorado, and 5% believed to be held at the New York Fed. Ronan Manley, a precious metals expert for Singapore's Bullion Star, told RT that he believes that actual gold U.S. reserves are likely smaller than claimed. The entire story around the U.S. gold reserves is opaque and secretive. There has never been a full independent audit of the U.S. gold reserves, and the custodians of the gold and the U.S. Mint and the Federal Reserve of New York will not let anybody into the vaults to view the gold or to count it, Manley told RT. Manley also raised doubts about the purity of the gold stored in American vaults being up to industry standards. Even the details that have been provided on the supposed U.S. gold holdings show that a majority of the gold bars are low purity and in weights that don't conform to the industry standard good delivery gold bar specifications. According to him, this gold can't be traded on the international trade market because of the low quality. While some have doubts about the U.S. gold supply, the legislation maintains returning to the gold standard puts control of the money supply with the market instead of the Federal Reserve, while keenly noting the Federal Reserve's trickle-down policy of expanding the money supply with no demand for it has enriched the owners of the financial assets, and it's endangered jobs, wages, and the savings of blue-collar workers. So, we know how the bankers have been treating us all along. It's been going on for quite a while now. And the reason why, of course, because of the boys in power, right? Cheney, Rothschild, and Fox News Murdoch begin drilling for oil in Syria, a violation of international law. This comes from, where does this come from? The Free Thought Project. After concluding the flow testing phase, AFEC Oil and Gas will now begin analyzing samples drawn from the Nest 2 drilling site, euphemistically dubbed Deborah's Well, in the Israeli-occupied region of Syria known as the Golan Heights. The New Jersey-based Genie Energy Limited, AFEC's parent company, claims a dubious cadre of investors come war profiteers, including Rupert Murdoch, Dick Cheney, Lord Jacob Rothschild, James Woolsey, as well as a number of current and former U.S. politicians. Prior testing at a separate AFEC site did not meet expectations, so the company sought sweet spots in the area. Analysis of samples from additional wells will be performed by AFEC scientists in conjunction with external international experts. To understand U.S. involvement in the quagmire in Syria, AFEC's oil exploration is of critical import. Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights region violates international law. Thus, Israel permits granting AFEC the ostensible right to perform exploratory tests of a possible large reservoir of natural gas and light oil. It is also illegal. But in a world where big oil remains powerful enough to drive foreign policy of the U.S. empire, this direct violation of the Geneva Convention might not even be worthy of a footnote, except to the people of Syria. In fact, as the Free Thought Project's Justin Gardner previously reported, the unsavory character heading Genie Oil is none other than Ephraim, or Effie, Edom, an Israeli military commander and former Knesset member who once called for the expulsion of the cancer of Arabs from Israel. Okay? He said, "Expel most of the Judea and Samaria Arabs from here. We cannot be with all these Arabs, and we cannot give up the land because we have already seen what they do here. Some of them may be able to stay under certain circumstances or certain conditions, but most of them will have to go." See, this is unbelievable. They don't treat people as individuals anymore. They're all in groups. It's the tribe mentality, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's get past that. Something else I found here I thought was a little bit interesting. Gallup asked Americans why they go to church. And surprisingly enough, it's not for the music. On Good Friday, Gallup published the results of a survey that asked respondents why they go to church or some other place of worship. Okay. Some 1,500 adults across the nation were asked to which degree these 7 things were important to them, which would be the sermons or the talks that teach you more about Scripture, or sermons or lectures that help you connect religion to your own life, or spiritual programs geared toward children and teens, community outreach and volunteer opportunities, religious leaders who are interesting and inspiring, social activities that allow you to get to know people, or a good choir, a praise band, cantors, or other spiritual music. And from the results, it shows that more than 9 out of 10 respondents said the sermon, both to learn about Scripture and to help connect religion to one's own life, was a factor in their decision to attend religious service. 3 in 4 respondents said it was a major factor that they attend. So basically, music is just, it's minor. Just 38% said it was a major factor to them. And I found that kind of amusing and telling because a lot of people grow up in small towns, with the small churches. And like this guy says here, he's been a lifelong Protestant. He grew up in a small town Pentecostal church. Since that time, had mostly been a free agent playing for the field for numerous other evangelical teams, Baptist, Lutheran, non-denominational, and probably other denominations I can't remember. My excuse for the lack of religious fidelity. I moved a lot, right? Each church, to one degree or another, had different theologies, religious dogmas, and social protocols. But the one thing they had in common, lots of music. Some of the music was good. Much of it was less than good. Regardless of the quality of the music or the talent of the performers, attendees were, of course, expected to worship God to the music and be deeply moved. So, the music is not the big thing at church, although some like to make it out to be that way. People go there to actually learn, and that is a good thing. Liberals have announced their plan to destroy normal Americans in what they call a civil war. How do you like that? Applauded by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, liberals have devised a plan they think will destroy normal Americans in a new civil war. Well, here's a spoiler alert. It really isn't that good of a plan. The San Francisco-based social media platform Twitter isn't known for their unbiased approach to social media. Now the CEO applauded an article in something called Medium, in which the writer of the article described how liberals intend to crush normal Americans into serfdom in a bloodless civil war. The goal of this war will be to turn the entire states into California by offering up a supermajority of liberals in political power. Because, well, that's working out so well in California, right? Homelessness is spiking uncontrollably. The tax burden is forcing people to leave. Regulations are shutting businesses. Housing costs have soared to unbelievable levels, and few have basic human rights there, unless they pay the government for permission. Pay the government for permission. Sounds like licensing, huh? Try not to roll your eyes when you imagine your own state running like the communists in charge that handled California, And oh boy. You've got people who are good professional people. They're living in their cars because they can't afford the outrageous taxes in that state. And I can imagine where the fuel taxes are at this point. Luckily, I'm on the complete opposite end of the country, which is a good thing for me. But that's only for me. Sounds kind of selfish, doesn't it? Anyway, there is speaking of California, sheriff of a California county with an outsized number of police shootings once said it was better financially to kill suspects than wound them. Kern County Sheriff Donnie Youngblood was looking for an endorsement in 2006 when he posed the question, when a deputy shoots somebody, which is better financially, to cripple them or kill them for the country? Kill them? Someone off camera asked before Youngblood answers, absolutely. Because if you cripple them, you have to take care of them for life. And that cost goes way up. Oh boy. Hey, there's a lot of heart put into that one, huh? The damning video was released Monday by Kern County Detention Officers Association, one of the 3 officers' unions that had endorsed Youngblood's upcoming election opponent, and Chief Deputy Justin Fleeman. Officers said that the county force, once labeled America's deadliest police, was in desperate need of positive changes. The Guardian profiled the county after 13 people were killed by police in 2015. The county had less than 900,000 residents at the time, but more fatal shootings than New York, which had 9 the same year. Monday's video, reportedly taken during an endorsement consideration interview, also saw Youngblood turn the loss of life at the hands of the police into a matter of dollars and cents. When a guy makes a bad shoot on somebody and kills them, $3 million and the family goes away, he said, comparing it to a jailhouse beating where many officers are present. Youngblood then went on to compare the cost of killing someone versus wounding. The sheriff told Bakersfield.com after the video release that his words were taken out of context, that he never inferred that we should shoot to kill. He added that he wishes he used different words. You think? You think. It seems as though this tough-on-trade deal we've got going on with China, switching gears here, everybody's worried about that. China's president caves, hands Trump a massive win on trade. This is from Conservative Tribune and Associated Press, between the two of them. But it says here, in marks widely seen as a victory on trade for the Trump administration, President Xi Jinping said Tuesday that he would work to cut tariffs on foreign automobiles and improve protections for intellectual property holders, the Associated Press reported. The remarks came at the Boao Forum on the island of Hainan in South China Sea, where China's president also promised to open its financial institutions to foreign investors to work on regional economic integration, the South China Morning Post said. The remarks came less than a week after President Trump floated the idea of tariffs on another round of Chinese goods, this time affecting $100 billion worth of Chinese imports to the United States. During the speech, Xi tried to paint his China as one of openness and free trade, even though the AP noted that it was the most closed major economy in the world. China's door of opening up will not be closed and will only be open wider, as I told the audience at the Economic Forum. We will significantly lower the import tariffs for vehicles and also reduce import tariffs for some other products. We will work hard to import more products that are competitive and needed for our people, while taking more efforts to join the World Trade Organization Product Procurement Agreement. Xi also committed China to encouraging normal technological exchange and pledged to protect the lawful ownership rights of foreign enterprises, which is basically your copyrights, okay? He also urged foreign powers to stop tariffs on high-tech Chinese exports, a clear reference to the Trump administration's levying on tariffs on $50 billion in certain technology products as a result of China's practices regarding intellectual property theft. Xi tried to paint his country's territorial disputes with his neighbors in a friendly light. We will not bully our neighbors, Xi said. Cold War thinking and zero-sum games are increasingly obsolete, he said. Arrogance or self-righteousness can only bump into walls at every turn. Ours is a nation that has courageously engaged in self-revolution and self-reform and kept overcoming systematic obstacles, the president added. Well, whatever. One does not expect the president of China to speak with blunt force honesty in front of the world at an economic forum hosted by his own country. That being said, everything Xi said pretty much lined up with America's demands for ending the burgeoning trade war between the U.S. and China. Two major points that Americans ought to take away was the promise to lower tariffs on automobiles, which the Chinese just raised on American imports last week, and to protect intellectual property. The former is no small victory for Trump. The Chinese tariffs implemented in response to the Trump administration's trade penalties on China were designed to inflict damage on the president and the Republican Party where it hurts, their base. Farmers and blue-collar workers were hit the hardest by the tariffs, and one could easily surmise that the tariffs were designed to influence the 2018 midterm elections. If the protections on intellectual property aren't actually just for show, that could be even bigger. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross has estimated that China's intellectual property theft may cost America up to $600 billion a year. Beijing's loose protections on intellectual property are what led to the terrorist showdown in the first place, after all. So that was pretty much the big deal. Was we have a lot of stuff that's made there, and if you look, if you notice, there were some planes going down, certain aircraft going down and things like that. I believe these are all controlled by satellite. Okay, so you have to be careful of something like that too. Everybody's heard of the if you see something, say something thing, right? Kind of makes sense to some degree. Well, there was a huge police operation after Scottish heavy metal campers were thought to be a suicide cult. It was a rescue operation including a helicopter, boats, and fire crews. It was launched after a passerby mistakenly thought a group of heavy metal campers were embarking on a sinister suicide pact. 3 adults and 3 young children who share the love of heavy metal music had sailed to the ruins of the 14th century Loch Leven Castle on an island in Loch Leven, Perthshire, for a couple of nights under the stars in their big teepee. But a passerby on shore raised the alarm Sunday, April 8th, worried that they had gone off to the island to kill themselves. A massive emergency response was launched involving a search and rescue helicopter, several fire crews and boats. Police officers smashed their way into the group's parked car at the water's edge in search of a suicide note. Once on dry land, the campers, including a university lecturer and school teacher, were quizzed by police, who said they were concerned about a possible kidnapping. Campers David Henderson, a modern languages teacher from Glasgow, Aberdeen University lecturer Panadianos Philos, a civil engineer, Ross Anderson were rescued along with 10-year-old children Natalia Teo, Jude Anderson, and 7-year-old Andrew Vasiliadis. Anyway, and their dog called Jazz. Mr. Henderson, who was also a singer with a black metal band, Nicotopia, said, "We do a lot of camping in rural parts of Scotland, at ruins and that sort of thing. We have a small boat, and we thought it would be good to take it out to the island and set up camp for the night. We got a large teepee, and we had set a campfire going. It was a nice evening, and one of the kids had already gone to sleep. Then all of a sudden it was like something from the X-Files. Mr. Philos, a lecturer at the University of Aberdeen, said, "It was a lovely evening. The only thing that wasn't so nice was that someone must have thought we needed rescuing. Next thing we knew, there was all these blue flashing lights on shore. We had no idea what was going on." The 37-year-old said, "There must have been about 50 to 70 people here, all coming to rescue us, even though we didn't need rescuing. I think someone was worried that we'd left our car parked at the edge of the water. They must have thought it was abandoned. The police smashed the window to get inside, and they told us later they were looking for a suicide note." Natalia said, "I was still awake when it happened. There were all these searchlights, and all I could see was some boats coming toward us. It was quite frightening because I thought they were going to arrest someone." The children were loaded onto the first 2 rescue boats and given life jackets. Mr. Henderson said, "They took us back to the car where we were greeted by about 22 vehicles, including loads of fire engines, ambulances, and police cars. We were led to an ambulance where they put digital thermometers in our ears and asked loads of questions. When they realized we were just a bunch of good friends taking our kids on a heavy metal camping trip, that was the end of it." He said, "They kind of made us feel as if we did something wrong. But we just like to go wild camping, drink beer, and listen to heavy metal music." Mr. Philos said the police were all very professional and treated us okay, but we never had one word of apology from them for interrupting our camping trip. The group camped on Reed Bower Island, which was just north of Loch Leven Castle. The landmark fortress was visited by Justin Bieber last year and is famously where Mary, Queen of Scots, was imprisoned in 1567. But anyway, see what happens? See something, say something, right? And then all of a sudden you get busted down. Hey, party's over, right? Unbelievable. Something here for the health. switch gears a little bit more here. Honey with turmeric is the most potent antibiotic that not even doctors can explain. Turmeric is one of the most popular spices in the world with exceptional culinary and medicinal characteristics. It's been used in Indian, Ayurvedic, and Chinese medicine for centuries, and it has a specific flavor and a deep yellow color. It's known to be a potent natural cure for respiratory issues, liver diseases, skin problems, minor cuts and wounds, muscle sprains, as well as gastric issues. Moreover, it can be highly effective against digestion issues, infections, inflammations, and even cancer. Turmeric is the active ingredient, curcumin, has an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and antimicrobial properties that make this spice the ideal natural cure against gastritis, microbes, peptic, gastric ulcers, as well as H. pylori. According to research, curcumin has a positive influence on DNA, cell survival, and the molecules of inflammation. It's also available to provide relief from osteoarthritis symptoms, and for this you'll need about 200 milligrams of turmeric on a daily basis. Turmerone, another ingredient in turmeric, is a bioactive element that will enhance your brain function and repair brain cells, and thus treat Alzheimer's. What you would need: a recipe for a natural turmeric antibiotic. You need a tablespoon of turmeric, 100 grams of organic honey. Preparation and use: you mix the ingredients in a glass jar, and if you have the flu, take a half teaspoon of it on an hourly basis. The following day, you'll need to take the same amount, but every 2 hours. On the next day, take the same dosage 3 times a day. Make sure you melt the mixture in your mouth before swallowing it. You can also add it to your cup of tea or milk. Okay, but turmeric is very, very good stuff for your health, as well as anything with black seed like pepper and things like that. And black seed, pepper, all the good stuff. Anyway, I'm Papa Bear. You're listening to What's Out There. We're going to take our first break, and we'll be right back.
Let me assure you that our priority will remain to ensure stability and security.
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, security
for Canadians.
Galactic Empire!
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
Attention L&M Radio Network listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the L&M Radio Network by calling 605-562-4203? No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 605-562-4203 to listen to the L&M Radio Network on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Brothers at Arms is not about being militant, though there is a time and place where that is necessary. Brothers at Arms is not about arguing, though there are times where things may get heated. Brothers at Arms is not about who is right or wrong. There are many sides to each issue. Brothers at Arms is about exploring those sides, about dealing with the issues facing us today, about coming together and, through opposing views, understanding the deeper truths that are in the middle. Join Ira Robinson and Joe Long each Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on LateNightInTheMidlands.com as these brothers at arms discuss what you need to know. Brothers at Arms, it's about time. Have you been looking for answers? Have you been seeking the truth but can't seem to find it? Late Night in the Midlands has the answers for you. Whether you are interested in the paranormal, aliens and UFOs, alternative health information, or just a little hope and inspiration, we have a show for you. Late Night in the Midlands, The Secret Teachings, Open Eyes, Red Pill Reality Show, Brothers at Arms, and many more shows. All here on the L&M Network for you to listen to at any time that you want. Everything is free to listen to, and though it is not required, we are listener supported, and all donations are deeply appreciated. You will not find shows like these in the mainstream media. Go to latenightinthemidlands.com to listen. The L&M Network, where the truth has no fear.
This is TJ Sanfilippo, host of Navigating the River Styx. Join us each and every Thursday night at midnight here on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Together, we will traverse the forbidden waters of the paranormal, the occult, our hidden history, conspiracies, and things that dwell in the darkness and the deep. Come, grab a seat by the fire away from the night that is closing in. I have tales to tell you. When the clock strikes 12, I invite you to join us here on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Until then, stay safe.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
Pulling myself together here, goodness. Music by Ben Sound at bensound.com. Kind of helps out a little bit here. Anyway, I'm Papa Bear. You're listening to us on latenightinthemidlands.com, lnmradionetwork.com, and also at 101.7 WCET, Columbia Talk. If you, we are also on TalkStream Live. So if you miss a live broadcast, it'll be replayed 12 hours after the live airing time on the L&M Radio Network. We also archive our shows, which you can find at YouTube at What's Out There, username What's Out There. And that's pretty much how you find out where we are. Anyway, back at it here. Epstein Island, I guess, went up in flames near just a couple days ago. There was a reported 4.9 earthquake not too far away from there, or anomaly or whatever. And the next thing you know, Epstein Island, Petto Island, St. James Island, whatever you want to call it, is ablaze. It's gone crazy. And I wonder why the whole island would go up like that. And there's speculation. The speculation is that because so many people have frequented this island, that all the records that are being kept there need to be destroyed. And it's not so much records as other things, I guess. that would be in there that could be incriminating, if you would. So, I don't know. Kind of, it seems almost like a CYA type of situation, but you never know. On Zero Hedge, they're telling us that the Petro-Yuan is the newest weapon for the China, Russia, Iran anti-USD allegiance or alliance. The anti-US dollar is what it is. After 25 years of dreams, planning, rumors, and testing, the Chinese Petro-Yuan is now official. Right now, almost all global oil trade is conducted in US dollars, using two benchmark varieties of crude, West Texas Intermediate and North Sea Brent, as the industry standards. It's no accident that these two benchmarks are based on imperial crude, American and British, and the irony of this is surely not lost on Baba Beijing. China is not selling oil, so the Petro-Yuan is a futures purchase contract denominated in renminbi for the country to import the stuff. As the world's biggest importer of hydrocarbons, Baba Beijing has long felt that pricing all its millions in tons of imports should be its national currency. Why should China pay for Russian natural gas or Venezuelan crude in Western Empire's currency of global financial control, Uncle Sam's greenback, right? Opinions outside China range from being nonplussed to claiming it's the most important news in modern financial history, but you'd have to search far and wide in Urango land, or NATO, EU, Israel, Australia, New Zealand, and its heavily censored and suppressed media to see for yourself. Outside the obligatory statement of fact in financial outlets like the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Reuters, and Bloomberg, silence from the West mainstream media is deafening, as is the screenshot below that they're showing here when searching for the topic. Only one mainstream article showed up on page 1 of the web search, and that was CNBC from 2017. Even just looking for Petro-Yuan gives identical search results. It's a Western media black hole. So, both endpoints on the West censorship and suppression of news that reports the truth about China, Russia, and Iran is lethally effective. Hitler called it the big lie. Urango land learned from a master. Urango land. I like the way they call that. Many people don't want to acknowledge that their decision to switch from the US dollar to the euro by Iraq's Saddam Hussein and Libya's Muammar Gaddafi had a lot to do with their countries being invaded, plundered, destroyed, and then they being killed in a highly humiliating and public fashion. In both cases, once they made the switch, it was just months before they were sacked. Other, more powerful oil producers have already ditched the greenback, but Western Empire only knows how to prey on weaker states like Grenada, Panama, Serbia, Africa, and the like. Iran has already stopped using the US dollar, as has Russia with China, which helps explain the West. Which explains why this self-defeating illegal sanctions and embargoes on them. All right. Anyway, both Iran and Russia make Uncle Sam brown the backside of his red and white and blue bloomers, as well as for the Zionist state of Israel. I don't even have to mention Urangoland's white-knuckle fear of China. The China, Russia, Iran anti-dollar alliance versus the West is causing the latter's elites to suffer from extreme geopolitical dysentery. Vulnerable, and it has to be said gullible, Iraq and Libya, yes, but this towering trio not so much, as they are two of the world's biggest petro exporters next door to the biggest importer. And they're all armed to the teeth with high-tech military hardware. When you look at the map that they show here, it geographically shows how ridiculous it is for these three players to do business in dollars. New York and Washington are so very far away. But anyway, as usual, you have to go outside the Great Western Firewall and its propaganda big lie to see the real world. For these, or for those who want to delve deeper, RT has done an informative series of articles on the South China Morning Post, and has done a couple of good ones. So, RT is a pretty good outlet for news, in my opinion. And of course, that's my opinion. You're going to listen, oh, Russia, Russia, Russia. We got to get over the Russia, Russia, Russia thing. Okay? And I've got a little bit of time here. A friend of mine posted this to Facebook yesterday, and to make me aware of it again, this is called the Clearfield Doctrine. Okay? For those of you not familiar with the Clearfield Doctrine, I'm going to go over this with you. The Supreme Court annotated statute Clearfield Trust Company versus the United States, 318 U.S. 363-371, 1942. Whereas defined pursuant to Supreme Court annotated statute, Clearfield Trust Company versus the United States, 318 U.S. 363-371, 1942, governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private corporate financial paper, or Federal Reserve notes, and securities, or checks, is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. What the Clearfield Doctrine is saying is that when public commercial paper is used by corporate government, then government at that point in time loses its sovereignty status and is tantamount to a mere private corporation. As such, government then becomes bound by the rules and laws that govern any private corporation, whereas to compel an individual to some specific performance based on its corporate statutes or corporation rules, then that government, like any private corporation, must be the holder in due course of a contract or other commercial concurrence between it and the one upon which the right and virtue for specific performance are made. Furthermore, that government must be willing to participate as part of the contract or commercial concurrence and must be recorded as such before trying to get any court to give force to its right and virtue, lest it be in violation of the 11th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And the 11th Amendment states, "The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state, or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state." This case is critical because it's a 1942 case that was fully settled after the Corporation of the United States filed its certificate of incorporation in Florida back in July of 1925, and was fully settled after the corporate government conformed to the use of the currency of the foreign-owned private corporation, Federal Reserve Bank. The private currency Federal Reserve note is still in use today, which confirms a private, not a public government does exist. Corporations are not and can never be sovereign. They are not real, they are a fiction and only exist on paper. Therefore, all laws created by these government corporations are private corporate regulations called public laws, statutes, codes, and ordinances to conceal their true nature. Do the judge and your lawyer know about this? You bet they do. Since the government bodies are not sovereign, they can't promulgate or enforce criminal laws. They can only create and enforce civil laws, which are duty-bound to comply with the law of contracts. The law of contracts requires signed written agreements and complete transparency. Did you ever agree to be arrested and tried under any of their corporate statutes? For that matter, did you ever agree to contract with them by agreeing to be sued for violating their corporate regulations? Enforcement of these corporate statutes by local, state, and federal law enforcement officers are unlawful actions being committed against the sovereign public, and these officers can be held personally liable for their actions. That's Bond versus the United States, 529 U.S. 334 in the year 2000. The United States government is just another corporation, which is the Articles of Incorporation of the United States Corporation Company. And that's also in a WordPress file. But anyway, there are some links there. I don't know if anybody has me on Facebook. If you type in the search Papa Bear, as PAPABARE 2024, you'll see a picture of me shaking Ron Paul's hand, and the name on there is Paul Barry. So if you want to add me to Facebook, you're more than welcome to. Just send me a private message and let me know that where you got the referral from. It was definitely straight from me. On another note here, apparently a U.S. Navy destroyer approached Syria without notification, and Russia is just a little bit upset. Late on Monday, we reported that a U.S. Navy destroyer, USS Donald Cook, the DDG-75, equipped with Tomahawk cruise missiles as well as the Aegis missile defense system, was approaching the port of Tartus in Syria, which doubles as a location for the Syrian logistics base of the Russian Navy. According to CNN Turk, the U.S. destroyer was at a distance of 100 kilometers from the port as of Monday. To be sure, Russia is concerned and seemingly angry that another showdown may be imminent. According to Pravda, the chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee, Vladimir Shamanov, said that the United States did not notify Russia of the approach of the group of U.S. warships to the naval base in Tartus. A group of ships of the U.S. Navy has appeared at a distance of 150 miles from the Tartus region. It is common in international practice. Potential participants of events in the area should be notified accordingly in advance. We have not been notified, although we have legally ratified the agreement on two bases in Tartus and in Khmeimim. Anyway, moreover, United States President Donald Trump said that he would think about the missile attack on Syria despite any resolutions at the UN Security Council. All this smells of something outside the framework of universally recognized international norms. More troubling is that on Monday, Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, said that the Americans would have to deal with serious consequences should they attack Syria. We have repeatedly warned the American side about highly negative consequences that may follow if they apply weapons against legitimate Syrian government, and especially if the use of these weapons, God forbid, affects our military men who legally stay in Syria. That was what the Russian ambassador to the UN said at a meeting in the UN Security Council. Big UN security meeting yesterday, too. I don't have any reporting on that, unfortunately. I probably will tomorrow. But, however, after yesterday's news that the office of Trump's personal lawyer was raided by the FBI and that attorney-client privilege between Trump and Cohen may be compromised, it now appears that in a desperate diversion attempt from his domestic troubles, a military response against Syria by Trump is now inevitable, especially following today's news that the president is canceling his trip to Peru's summit of the Americas in order to oversee the Syria military response. Now, Trump is not blind to what's going on in Syria. He knows what's happening in Syria. He's not dumb. He's got some good intelligence out there. But there are some things I don't know. Anyway, Zero Hedge, another one here. Stocks extend overnight gains as Navarro says doors open for trade talks. Yet another headline proclaiming yet more old news that America is willing to talk about trade tariffs from Peter Navarro, and U.S. equity market machines lift stocks to the highs of the day. Trump trade advisor Peter Navarro was speaking on Bloomberg Radio. He began with his usual aggressive rhetoric. Navarro says China has a long history of IP theft, tech transfers. Navarro says U.S. being taken apart by unfair trade practices. Navarro, U.S. to defend its farmers against China's bullying. But then he said this. Navarro says there are doors open for trade talks with China, and then added that it's debatable whether tariff threats hurt markets, and the news sparked a rebound off post-open selling pressure. NASDAQ erased all its losses from Thursday's plunge, but the bonds, they're still unimpressed. They're not too good. But once you start saying the doors are open with trade for China, more equitable trade, boom, what do you think that's going to do to stocks? It's going to send them up pretty good, huh? Global debt hits a record $237 trillion, up $21 trillion in 2017. Kind of reminds me, global debt, who do they owe this to? Anyway, last June we reported that according to the Institute of International Finance, perhaps the best known for its periodic and concerning reports summarizing global leverage statistics, as of the end of 2016, in a period of so-called coordinated growth, global debt hit an all-time high of $217 trillion, over 327% of global GDP, and up $50 trillion over the past decade. 6 months later, on January 4th, 2018, the IIF released another global debt analysis which disclosed that the global debt rose to a record $233 trillion at the end of the third quarter of 2017, between $63 trillion in government and $58 trillion in financial, $68 trillion in non-financial, and $44 trillion in household sectors, a total increase of $16 trillion increase in just 9 months. Now, according to its latest quarterly update, the IIF has calculated that the global debt rose another $4 trillion in the past quarter to a record $237 trillion in the fourth quarter of 2017, and more than $70 trillion higher from a decade earlier, and up roughly $20 trillion in 2017 alone. The IIF report, which also sources data from the IMF and the BIS, IMF is International Monetary Fund, and the BIS is the Bank of International Settlements. But they found that the share of the global debt remains well above 300% of global GDP, with a mature market, which is debt GDP now at 382%. The silver lining, that number was slightly below recent levels, as increasing GDP growth in DMs helped DMs, I'm not sure what DMs are, helped reduce the debt to GDP ratio. However, this was more than offset by a surge in debt in emerging markets, where total debt GDP is now well above 200%. The good news, if only temporarily, is that on a consolidated basis, global debt GDP fell for the fifth consecutive quarter as global growth accelerated. The ratio is now around 317.8%, or 4 percentage points below the all-time high hit in Q43 2016. To be sure, even a modest slowdown in GDP growth, let alone a contraction, would probably send the ratio surging into new all-time highs. So what was the culprit for this unprecedented debt surge? Central banks, of course. Still, low global rates continue to support unprecedented levels of debt accumulation, officials from the IIF said in a release. As the report also notes, among mature markets, household debt as a percentage of GDP hit all-time highs in Belgium, Canada, France, Luxembourg, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland, which, as Bloomberg correctly notes, that's a worrying signal. With interest rates beginning to rise globally, Ireland and Italy are the only major countries where household debt as a percentage of GDP is below 50%. IIF representatives also highlighted the weaker the U.S. dollar as having masked longer-term concerns about debt sustainability, particularly in emerging markets. The reduction in debt to GDP came mainly from developed markets such as the United States and Western Europe, but was an overall trend with 36 of the 49 countries in the survey sample recording a drop in debt to GDP. Among the emerging markets, household debt to GDP is approaching parity in South Korea at 94.6. Finally, the report also found the U.S. government debt is now 99% of GDP as a sector, with the United States expecting to record a $1 trillion budget deficit by 2020, according to the latest just released CBO forecast. The U.S. should cross 100% debt GDP in the next few months. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, we're still hoping for this currency reset, right? That's a big reset coming in. Trump's Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert has resigned. As we anticipated weeks ago, John Bolton's arrival in the West Wing is already causing major upheaval among the ranks of the West Wing's national security and Homeland Security staffers. As the Washington Post points out, Bossert's departure comes a day after Bolton's first official day on the job. Bossert, who was a staunch ally of H.R. McMaster, likely knew his days were numbered as soon as McMaster announced his retirement. Bossert, a favorite of Chief of Staff John Kelly, is leaving one day after National Security Advisor John Bolton began the job. Bossert, an ally of former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, was believed to be on shaky footing in the Bolton era, and he resigned 2 days after Michael Anton, the National Security Council spokesman, also quit. Bossert, a longtime government official who was often behind the nuts and bolts planning of the administration's initiative, wasn't a marquee name. But he was liked by the president, senior administration officials said, and often defended Trump's agenda in meetings. The president is grateful to Tom's commitment to the safety and security of our great country, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a statement. Of course, Bossert isn't Bolton's first ouster. Late Sunday, National Security spokesman Mike Anton told Politico on Monday that he was leaving the administration. More turmoil in the White House to start on Tuesday morning, where Bloomberg reports that Trump's Homeland Security, Tom Bossert, right? Okay. Prior to his brief White House tenure, Bossert was a fellow at the Atlantic Council, and prior to that, he served as Deputy Homeland Security Advisor to President George Bush. In that capacity, he co-authored the 2007 National Strategy for Homeland Security. Prior to that, Bossert held positions at FEMA, the Small Business Administration, and the Office of the Independent Counsel and the House of Representatives. He was also appointed as Director of Infrastructure Protection under Bush, overseeing the security of critical U.S. infrastructure, a post he held for 2 years. Bossert said the attack, falling exactly 1 year after the U.S. bombed a Syrian airbase over another suspected use of chemical weapons in the rebel-held territory, struck him. But the era where U.S. acted as world police is over. He says, I think the president's got a point. It's been very clear, he said, for too long the United States of America has been taking advantage of in their responsibility to provide security for the entire world, putting their resources and their treasure and their boys and girls on the line. American troops aren't going to fix the 6 or 7 different ongoing conflicts and wars going on in the Middle East or in Syria at this stage. Okay, so this guy knows what's going on. He knows that the age of war is over. It's all done. What else can we say, right? It's coming through a little at a time. All we have to do is just, I don't know, sit back and bear with it and watch it all come together. And don't be, keep your eyes and ears open because it's all happening now. Anyway, I'm Papa Bear. Thanks for listening. That is what's out there.
Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of texts. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid texts being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same 2 people that we're discussing a little bit later in the text, the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there?